Hello, welcome everybody to our third session of the day. I am very pleased and blessed to be able to share this next group here, creating OER with non-traditional courses, experience with the Rebus Textbook Success Program. Something we're excited to learn more about. That being said, today's ground rules, please remember to keep your microphones muted. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat and we'll be able to address those when we have time or if the moderator moves forward. Today's moderator is Jenny Parks from MHEC, and I will let Jenny take it from here.
Thank you, Kyle, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited you're interested in hearing about this work we've been doing. I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of the work, and then I'm going to have each of our presenters introduce him or herself and tell you a little bit about the specific work that they've done under this grant. So MHEC, the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, in concert with the other regional compacts, received a Hewlett grant for 18 months of work, where we each were tasked with two things: helping your states figure out how to increase the implementation of OER, and specifically with a focus on equity. So MHEC took a very pragmatic approach. We offered a whole range, a whole menu of options for our states and for our region. And one of the particular things we thought is both an equity and just a broad challenge is getting more OER into CTE, career and technical education courses. We know from talking to folks around the nation, and particularly in our member states, that it's hard to find the CTE materials. There aren't as many, and though they are in skills commons in a lot of places, that's actually a kind of an unwieldy environment for a lot of people. And CTE tended to be very much focused on some of the specificity of the location in which those courses are offered. You might have a professor with a particular set of specialized skills and training, and then they might be preparing you for work at local industries, et cetera. They tend to be even more customizable. They need to be more customizable in many ways than our general ed OER. So we toyed with different ways to incentivize and support the creation and adoption and modification of such materials. And we decided that what a lot of CTE faculty probably need, I think all faculty, but in particular CTE faculty, might need help with the creation of the resource because it's not traditionally something that falls in their wheelhouse. I always like to use the example. Many English professors have written books. They would have that skill set. And so they don't have that lift. As far as publishing and creating things in a graphic and an online environment, for someone who teaches a very hands-on skill that's not in that type of venue and in that type of world, that's going to be a heavier lift. So we contracted with Rebus Textbook Success Program. And for those of you who don't know what they are, they're a nonprofit located up in Canada. And they actually have a number of services, but this one in particular will walk a cohort of folks through the creation of an OER through to the publishing and even the marketing phase. And in this case, we had folks joining with several different cohorts, and they take you all the way from teaching you a lot of the Creative Commons content about open licensing and things like that, but also through how to use Pressbooks, which comes with the program for the use while you're in the program, and how to use that, how to, where do you find images? Where do you, how do you make the correct citations, et cetera. And so I know that there are two issues here. There's learning to do OER and then specifically doing it for these CTE courses. So then what we did, knowing that we had this money and we had this arrangement with Rebus, we put a call out to our community and said, hey, we would like you to propose a project, and we will choose among them. And we privileged projects that drew from folks from more than one state. We privileged projects that served incarcerated populations, and those that had some other equity component that would help make it something that would have that little extra value added. For example, if you were proposing a resource in a field that we know is either it is in short supply or those credentials are needed in the near future. So that gives you a little bit of idea. That's how these three proposals were chosen and how we set this in motion. So without further ado, let's go and let's start with the folks at Alpena Community College, and they will introduce themselves and talk to you about their project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Mantlow, and I work in the Learning Technology Department at Alpena Community College. We are a very small community college located in northern Michigan. So when I heard about this opportunity through MEC, I did a call to our faculty to see if anyone would want to do this. And of course, being that we're kind of a small college, it's always hard to get people enthusiastic about OER, but we would like to use more of it. And we'd like to see more of it in our college. So Andrew is one of the faculty that I work with who is very interested in OER. And of course, he jumped on the opportunity for us to do this together. So we applied, we got the grant, we got to go through the Rebus training, which was very informative. Neither of us have written books, so this was just, there's things you would never think about if you had not done this type of coursework. So some of the things that jump out to me is just like marketing, right? You know, so you start to think about maybe strategies that you would want to do with that. So you just, there's all these things that we're thinking about now that we wouldn't have thought about before. So our text is for sheet metal and fabrication, so welding, and I'll let Andrew talk a little bit about the content. So go ahead, Andrew.
Hello. So it started out when I first took over the machining department here, and I teach a welding class and fab classes and apprentice classes. And I found that a lot of even the textbooks that were available, which even textbooks are fairly hard to come by in our field, but a lot of them taught stuff that for what we were doing didn't matter or seemed to be in a realm we didn't need. So I started writing the OER probably 2 years ago for sure. Mm-hmm. And I found out, like everybody has said, I am a very good welder and machinist, not a very good book writer. So I had probably, I don't know, 1 million chapters, which probably should have been 5. So that's where Lauren really helped out. And like she said, the Rebus folks helped out a lot, stuff I would have never thought of. I was making a book in my brain that fit what I was teaching. And they brought up, stuff that I would have never thought of, like videos. And now we're actually, shooting and recording videos, which is a lot slower than I thought it was going to be. Again, I'm a machinist and a welder, not a videographer, but we're getting there. So it's quite the learning curve, but that's something I would have never put in a, when I think book, I think of a classic book, not a, an online document that can have videos and quizzes and all of that. So.
Yeah, I really think exploring some of the interactive elements is for us something we didn't think about before. I have to say, even just when you're putting the content into Rebus, and you can have kind of a table of contents at the beginning of your chapter, and you can use anchors to jump through to those areas or definitions and that sort of thing, is things that can't exist in a physical book. So being able to do that has been very interesting and a lot of fun, putting what Andrew has written into this kind of digital format. Of course, as you know, everything takes longer than we think it will. So we had this ambitious idea that we would be done right now, and we're not there yet, but we are working on videos like Andrew said. So that's kind of the stage that we're in. We're always looking for more people that might be interested in helping us, because right now it is just me and Andrew. So anybody that's in that welding field, I'll throw the call out there if you know someone that might want to help us as we're on this journey. So.
Before we move on, it does look like someone has put into the chat, the welders at my college might like to see this. Maybe they'd be willing to help. Do you have a link or a way that they can take a look at what you're doing or get in touch with you?
Yes, I will throw that in the chat.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. Lauren, Andrew, did you want to share anything else about the work at this point? No?
Nope.
All right, and we're going to move on to hear about Lauren's work.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak a little bit about our project. I'm here representing Odyssey Beyond Bars, which is a higher education in prison program out of UW-Madison. And so Odyssey Beyond Bars specifically offers humanities-based 4-credit college courses at the state prisons here in Wisconsin. So we've been in operation for a number of years now, but this semester, so spring 2022, we decided to expand. So we were previously operating at just one prison, offering one course a semester. And this semester we've expanded to 4 different prisons, offering a total of 5 2 specific individual courses, 4 sections of an English course, and 1 section of an international studies course. So leading up to this expansion, we had the idea that OER could actually be a really useful tool for us to adopt as part of our teacher training materials. So with the expansion, there are a lot of different elements. We're learning new protocols at the different prisons. We're also onboarding new teachers. We're onboarding new tutors. Tutoring is a major component of our program, so that students can have some additional classroom support. And one challenge that we came up against right at the very beginning when we started conceptualizing this expansion was how to make sure that everybody was on the same page, which is really, really critical when we're talking about collaborating and partnering with the Department of Corrections, who is our partner in this space, of course. So we can't teach anything in the prison if the prison doesn't let us do that. So how do we make sure that everybody's on the same page? How do we make sure that everybody feels comfortable? How do we make sure that certain practices or protocols are being followed? And so this is where we thought that developing a teacher training manual and other teacher and instructional related materials would be critical, and that doing so through the OER model would be really important, precisely because of the flexibility and accessibility that OER offers. So things can change in the prison context very quickly. Protocols can change, directives can change. And so we needed something that was also going to be really flexible, that would help us be able to pivot and make sure that everybody was on the same page, and then not constantly be printing out lots of new documents to make sure that people have those resources available. So of course, OER checks all of those boxes. We have a pretty small team. It's myself and a few other folks who work for Odyssey Beyond Bars, but we've also gotten some interest from other folks around the state. So we particularly operate in the UW system, but we know folks here in Wisconsin at Marquette and also some partners at the technical colleges that are also in this space. And so we are seeing how we can make sure that we're having a cohesive resource, but that we're also learning from best practices from folks who are already in this space. And this has kind of been one of the central, I don't want to say tensions of this project, but how to keep something that's specific to Odyssey Beyond Bars, but that other folks who are operating in the higher ed prison space can use this resource and then tweak the elements that maybe don't apply to their particular program or their particular offerings. And so it's been a really interesting amalgamation of ideas and people doing this work. And so that's been really exciting. And so I'm happy to entertain and answer any questions that folks might have, but I thought it might be interesting to just quickly share one piece of this. So we, as I mentioned, tutoring is a key element of our program, and we have a pretty big team, over 10, well, big for us anyway, 10 different tutors who either are completely volunteer or are on our staff in some way, shape, or form. And we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page because, again, we're at 4 different sites. We are in 2 maximum security prisons, 1 medium security prison, and 1 minimum security prison. And so the protocols can vary pretty significantly. And so we wanted to create a resource to make sure that everybody was feeling comfortable about this work that they were going to be doing this semester. So the main goal is to eventually get everything in Pressbooks, but right now we've been drafting in Google Docs. So I'm about to show you our Google Doc. Eventually, again, the idea is to make it even more pretty in Pressbooks, but I'll just quickly give you an overview. So this is actually the second page. So I would ideally like to make it a little more interactive. We heard from the first group about incorporating videos and other interactive elements. I think that's definitely somewhere we want to go, but we just wanted to start with getting some of the basics down, with the idea that we're constantly adding to it, because something happens every day where we think, oh, that needs to go in the tutor training manual. So this is our table of contents. It has these anchor, in theory, they should be anchor links. Oh, I can't edit it. Well, anyway, tech problems. So it's a pretty extensive, as you can see, table of contents. And we wanted to try to be pretty comprehensive with, what to do if you have tech issues, who to call. Do you call me? Do you call someone who's on site at the prison? Again, we're very specific. Are you teaching English 100? This is stuff that you should keep in mind as a tutor. Are you teaching for this other course? So we try to be pretty comprehensive. And then we also wanted to make sure that we were incorporating some of that sort of pedagogical and instructional philosophy as part of it, to make sure that we were all approaching this work with the same sort of drive and mission in hand. So again, I think I'm logged into the wrong account. I should have checked that. So I can't click the anchor links. So so it's an overview of our staff. So this is some of the interesting elements of OER, right? So a lot of this can be adapted and utilized by folks across the state. But at the same time, the way that we have it right now is very specific to our program. And so that's something that we've kind of been grappling with throughout. And this is something that I brought to every Rebus meeting to talk to folks about. How do I make this super specific to our program, but also make sure that it's a resource that somebody else who's interested in higher ed in prison or offering a similar type of program or wants to incorporate tutoring, right? How can they make use of this as well and remove the pieces that don't align to them? And so, for example, the first 2 pages are probably not going to be very useful for somebody that's not tutoring with Odyssey Beyond Bars. But then when we start to look at stuff like tutoring mission, this is something that I think teachers in all different spaces could make use of. And so our resources continue to have this sort of these dual poles of like, what's really specific to Odyssey Beyond Bars and what we're trying to do in the prisons in Wisconsin, and what can be adapted for other folks in Wisconsin, right? And then what might be adaptable for folks who are working in higher ed in prison, but not in the state of Wisconsin, right? And so protocols and related things can change even when you just cross state lines. So what's happening in Wisconsin isn't necessarily what's happening in Iowa. But at the same time, Odyssey Beyond Bars benefits from its membership in the Big Ten Consortium for Higher Education in Prison. I'll stop sharing, but I can always reshare if folks have questions or want to see a specific piece of this. Odyssey Beyond Bars is a member of the Big Ten Consortium for Higher Ed in Prison. And so once a month, we meet with other higher ed in prison programs across the Big Ten, and we benefit from what they're doing and the challenges that they have. And it's informing our work a little bit every time we have a chance to have a conversation, because again, access, operational capacity, all these sorts of things really differ when you from state to state, but some of those core elements remain the same, or at least you hope that they do. And so, so that is our project, and I'm really grateful for the expertise of that I was able to benefit from the Rebus program, and thanks so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Lauren. All right. We're going to hear from one more presenter, and that is Nicole. Do you say Simonson or Simonson? Simonson. Yes.
Yeah, Simonson.
Simonson. And she's going to share with us what she's been doing.
Hi, yes, I'm Nicole Simonson. I am from the UW-Milwaukee College campus and from the College of Nursing, more specifically RN to BSN completion. So our students are already practicing nurses with an associate's degree, and they're looking to obtain their bachelor's degree in nursing. So It's really been an exciting journey joining the Rebus. It felt like last summer was kind of like a boot camp, kind of learning and ramping up on all the ins and outs of how to prepare and get started with OER. There was a lot of useful tools. It was a lot of information at first, but slowly we were able to start to break it apart and digest it more. We had, the Rebus sessions, but then we also had our own individual sessions. So to really, break it apart and make sure that we were understanding and digesting the information. And as Lauren said earlier, that there was just aspects of it that we hadn't even thought about, like copyright or marketing, and what kind of accessibility and there's all these different variations. So we as a group are a team of 5, I believe, and mostly nurses that teach. And we were thinking about it from an RN to BSN perspective. There's a lot of resources out there for nurses and those becoming nurses. But we wanted it to be really tailored to why is it so significant for these nurses for that bachelor's, and what they get out of it when they're done. So ours is more of like a transition to practice, or what happens after my bachelor's. So we provide them with tools and resources that they can help to elevate themselves, or now that they have a bachelor's degree. So we're not starting at that really basic level that we're preparing that new nurse for. We're really starting at the level of the practicing nurse. So it's meeting them where they're already at and providing them with the tools and resources to optimize their bachelor's degree. We are right now in the peer review phase of our OER. So we're starting to have that. We had a little bit of challenges, maybe because of the dynamics in our group. We are using Teams as our venue for housing everything and editing and working in it, because bringing outsiders into Pressbooks was just not, it would have been having a whole teaching session with outsiders. So we thought that to minimize the challenges or additional meeting with outsiders would reduce that barrier. So then they can help review and provide perspective without going into Pressbooks. So none of our content is really in Pressbooks yet. So we're kind of saving the best for last per se. But then we'll have everything fine-tuned and tweaked and whatnot before we get it all in there. The one thing that I feel that might have been the hardest thing out of everything is I think many of the groups have multiple roles and hats that they wear, and being able to juggle schedules to be able to meet and make sure we're meeting our timelines. So we really had to, hold to our timelines as much as possible, knowing that sometimes things happen, but really being cheerleaders for that.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, so I, as the moderator and also the person who kind of had this idea for the grants, have all these questions for you now, because it's been a while since we've been able to connect and talk about the status of things. So the first question I had is, if you had to choose one lesson you've learned in this, and then and it could be the advice that you then would give to someone else who wanted to do something like this. They could be separate, they could be the same, but what's the lesson? What's the advice? And we'll start with Lauren and Andrew.
Sure. So I would say that if you want to go into this, you really want to make sure you know how much work you're committing to. This is quite a project, and I think once you go through the Rebus program, you realize all the pieces involved, that it's more than one person can do, or 2 people, and that you want to have people on your team that have expertise in different areas. Like if you have somebody who's a graphic designer that you can bring along, if you have someone that does marketing, you have people that want to edit, and if you have a few content experts, subject matter experts like Andrew, that will make your process go a lot smoother. So when one person doesn't have to wear 10 hats, it'll be easier to be successful with your project. So I think for me, that's the biggest takeaway. So build your team going into it and make sure you have the time commitment so that you can actually produce something within a reasonable amount of time.
Great.
So I don't know
Thank
if Andrew
you.
has something else he wants to
Yeah,
say,
Andrew.
From my perspective, I would say just start and do it. I know our book isn't perfect, but I use a lot of it in class. I use the portions of like bend lines in our sheet metal class, and forms and stuff like that. So and I don't mind. We find errors. There's errors in it, and I know there's errors, and it actually the class enjoys finding the errors, quite honestly, sometimes. So when we work through that kind of stuff. So I think it's great for the way I teach, and we're not plugging along quite as fast as we want, but all in all, I think it's a great project. So
I agree. I've heard some folks who have OER and develop them, that actually becomes part of the instructional process, is as a student works with a section and they say, well, if you wrote it like this, it might be clearer. Then they become part of an updated version or adding an alternative explanation. And that really is a great demonstration of their mastery and their learning. And if nothing else, if they find errors, that they read it. And so when I taught, I used to actually put little things like that in, and then I kind of knew if they found that, oh yeah, well, at least you are reading it. So I think you're right. It's all win-win. You just do something different with it. Those are great cautions and encouragement. Lauren, what about you? What kind of lessons, what kind of advice?
Yeah, so I'll echo a little bit of what Lauren was saying. I think I underestimated what level of like project management would need to take place with this. When you think about writing an OER, developing an OER, you might, like, for me, I was thinking about the tech piece. I was kind of nervous about that, learning some of the tech that I eventually wanted to include in it. I thought about the writing and the drafting and how to organize it, like those sort of like book related questions. And then when we started doing the work, it was very much like the people related questions that I was like, oh, this is the hard part. So we got a lot of interest from folks on our team who wanted to contribute this piece or that piece. And then if you don't have somebody who's really dedicated to the managing the project, it's really easy for things to kind of go off the rails, or you get delayed because everyone that's on our team has a full-time job in which they do other things unrelated to the OER. And so that was the unexpected. Like, I went into this experience thinking, oh my gosh, I'll have to learn this tech. And I was kind of excited about some of those new skills that I was going to walk away with, but it's actually the skills that, and it's not that those aren't there. I've definitely, I will be walking away with some of that, but it's very much like people related stuff where it's like, okay, following up with team members, making sure people are on the same page, figuring out how to kind of like put a little bit of pressure on somebody when they said that they were going to write that thing and they didn't,
Yep.
And so I guess, in terms of offering advice, it would be kind of figuring out your team. And there was a section in the training that we did over the summer in particular, where we kind of dove into like what the different roles are. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't even conceptualize of the team in that way, where like manager, author, editor, copy, like in all of the different ways. And sometimes somebody has more than one role, right? But conceptualizing of the team in that comprehensive way just had never crossed my mind. A lot of the work that I had done previously in my life had been very solitary work. And even when you're working with a team, it's not as, at least for me, it hasn't been as, this is very collaborative, at least the way that we've developed it. And one of the challenges of collaboration is really just making sure everyone's on the same page. So
right.
That's all.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
And I would say that's a theme in the comments both of you had. which is really making sure that you're anchoring that mission and that scope right up front, and timeline and commitment, et cetera. So I'm going to take a quick break before we hear from Nicole and just read some of the comments that are in the chat. They are right on point, and they speak to, if you want to just take a look at them, different ways. And Andrew, this is, I think, in response to some of the things you were saying, just different ways that, even if it's not perfect, even if you don't use all of it, how many textbooks are perfect, and how many of them do you use every chapter of? Well, I've never used an entire textbook in any class I've ever taken or taught. So I know that's a good point. And then there are some folks in there sharing some of the ideas they have for, again, with the students engaging with the text, which again, then gets you even past the OER into the open pedagogy and some things like that. So thank you for adding that, folks. All right, Nicole, what kind of lessons have you learned, and what type of advice might you offer?
Well, as you get really deep into the content development, you get thoughts and ideas start to, surface, like, oh, I want to add this, I want to add that. You start to wanting to make this 5-chapter book a 20-chapter book or whatever, and knowing you don't have to do everything within the first version, or you could have a like a part 2 or something like that, where there's more of a focus on other aspects of the material, that your first go around doesn't have to include everything. And then as you get better at it, you'll be able to, I think it'll be easier. Hopefully it will be easier. But so we intentionally started off with ours as like a handbook, and we intentionally made it more of a smaller scale with content, so that our first go around at creating something, we weren't burning ourselves out with the amount that we wanted to accomplish.
Right. Well, and not burning out your students with the amount that they need to consume. Sometimes smaller amounts of information are uploaded into the brain and utilized more readily than a lot. So great. Okay, well, I have one more set of questions, and then we'll open it up for questions from everyone else. Where are you just summarize for us where you are in the process, and your plans maybe for marketing, housing it, et cetera. And I'll start with Lauren and Andrew.
Sure. So right now we are still creating content. We have a lot of content already done and added to Pressbooks, which will be where the textbook will live ultimately. We are working on videos right now and creating some interactive elements, as well as some additional chapters. And so then once we have all that, we can kind of give it a final comb through, final edit, and then hopefully get that out there for other people to use at that point, because right now we aren't really ready for that. Although the chapters are out there, they're not publicly viewable yet. So once we get to that stage, I think we're going to start thinking a little bit more about how we want to go about marketing it, or doing some sort of release notification. But
well, MEC will be happy to help you with that. So
awesome.
We're excited. Do you have any, I know it's hard to predict, but do you have any kind of a timeline there when you think you might have a first version out there for folks? Because I can tell you, when we started talking to our community about what kind of needs are out there, you always heard people going, welding!
I would like
to hope have a big market.
Yes, I'd like to hope perhaps for the fall semester. I know for Andrew and I, it's a lot easier to work on this in the summer. We have some more time then. So, right now we got very busy in fall and spring here with teaching and my full-time job here at the college. So,
well, I love that you guys are doing videos and that interactive component, and especially for something that you kind of have to see someone do it to kind of get it. At least I would have to see them doing it. It'd be difficult for me to read about that and not get it into my head the right way. So I think it's wonderful. But they do take a lot of time in editing, et cetera. So, okay, well, as soon as you've got something, you got to let us know, and we'll make sure that we get the word out to the rest of the OER community. So,
absolutely.
Andrew,
absolutely.
Did you have any other things you wanted to mention about future plans?
No, I think she summed it up pretty well. And somebody else said every time you do something, you figure out 5 more things you want to do. And, it started out as 5 chapters, and now I got about 25 more planned. So I think I kind of backtracked. I'm using the first chapters this semester in one class, and I actually, this is going to branch out into like 2 more. So, I'm hoping by the summer to have it done and ready for the fall class to actually just, present it as a finished, at least the
That's
first
wonderful.
iteration of a finished product.
Well, great. Like I said, we look forward to it and we will help you spread the word. Lauren, what are your plans?
So we are continuing to draft some sections. The tutoring manual piece that I shared earlier is complete in the sense that, we finished it, we drafted it, and we've tested it this semester. And so we're making tweaks by using it. And so the idea is that we'll continue to do that with some of the other elements. And then eventually the goal is to have it live in Pressbook. So we're debating on whether or not to handle that internally, whether one of us does that lift or whether we hire a graduate student who might be interested in this work that has some expertise in Pressbook. So that's a remaining question, but that's eventually where it's going to live.
Great. Well, as with Lauren and Andrew's work, I hope you'll let us know so that we can help spread the word. Nicole.
Yeah, we're starting kind of small scale. We based a lot of our work on a couple different courses within our program. So we're going to scaffold some of the readings and activities within about 3 courses in the program, and kind of just layer information. We have I didn't mention this earlier, we're having a scaffolded case study per se within the handbook, where the same character or individual will cut across all the chapters.
That's great.
So they evolve over time as they're progressing, so that hopefully the reader is able to relate or identify with some aspects of it and being like, yeah, I never thought about it that way, or yes, this applies to me. But as far as marketing, we haven't really gotten to that conversation piece.
Sure.
I know that we will market within the UWM's or UW system and aspects there, but where it goes from there, we're open to opportunities.
Sure. Well, when the time comes, let me know. We'll get you connected with our colleagues up at Fox Valley Technical College up in Wisconsin, who are also producing a lot of OER and with the OpenRN project. And they've had some amazing success with some of their materials. So I think they're probably going to be able to give you some great ideas. In fact, I think one of the problems they ended up having is the volume of transactions they were getting for their I think they had to pivot pretty quickly and implement the IT that would support that. So it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, this is a time where we're going to open this up for the audience to, unmute yourselves and ask us some questions. Put your hand up first, and then I'll try to manage the chaos a little bit that way. But yeah, this is your chance to ask these folks who've implemented and done these things what it's like. Any questions? Well, for those of you who might be interested, Kyle, did you have something?
No, I'm just really curious about the welding stuff, right? So I can't wait to hear the press release of that welding information. There's a lot of good opportunities, right, for CTE. And so my understanding is that it's not yet released in terms of text, but the goal is, as you stated, for fall. Is that correct?
Yes. So I can show you like the first few pages if you all want to see that.
We do. I do. I'm excited.
All right, let me pull that up real quick here. And
as you are doing that, Lauren, I'll just give you guys a little bit more information about us here at MHEC. So this, like I said, is one of many types of, we did a bunch of little mini grants from our big grant and tried different ways to push the needle, right? To move the needle on OER. And this is one that we're really excited about. So we're thinking about another way to implement something like this, even more targeted, hoping to get more information from the community about those areas of high need where there just isn't enough variety or just enough resources out there. So as we move into the next phase of proposing our work to Hewlett, this CTE work and this supported work will definitely continue to be something we'll propose to support. So keep us in mind. And when you see the call going out, let us know. Okay, yeah, let's take a look.
So this is one of our first chapters here on common shapes and considerations. So we have different bends available for you to look at here. You can see the pictures, the diagrams, and of course you can jump through the chapter with the anchors. So this is just a little snippet for you to see. So
that's great. So let's see, Nicole is saying, one thing I hope is that it inspires others within the college to want to incorporate or create, let me read this, OER. Yeah, I think that's an important piece too. I think seeing people have some success and just getting to hear what it was like. I will tell you one of the things that we've heard from the various little projects that we've tried to stir up and implement and support is that this type of thing is great, but the amount of time it takes, really, there needs to be a stipend for that time. And so we definitely are, yeah. And so we had the one grant and we started, and we're going to do fewer things the next time around. But again, with more insight and more knowledge than we had before. But I do think that's an important piece. Maybe hire a project manager, Lauren, and maybe buy out some faculty time. We don't know the best way yet to do it, but we do know that that is something that is chronically underfunded and underconsidered, with OER grant programs and things of that nature.
I absolutely agree with that, Jenny. And also the other feature that with the Rebus sessions that have been a common theme is the instructional design component.
Oh, yeah.
Be able to know how to utilize the technology and leverage it for your own needs. Most of us, that's not, book writing might not be our thing, but that technology might not be either.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking that there's definitely a place out there for someone who supplies the project manager, the instructional designer, and then just pulls people together. I know in some of our member states, they've got some pretty good system level programs where they do bring teams together like that to support. But again, it's not in huge numbers yet. It can't be, they can't afford it. But we're looking for these models, that really support faculty and the content experts where they are to produce these wonderful things. So.
Could I add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I agree with that. It's really important to have that content matter expert. But one thing we were fortunate because our team didn't even really know what we're getting ourselves into when we agreed to join Rebus and the sessions and everything. The person that brought us all together from UW intentionally inserted a team member that was from instructional design. So in the beginning, we were like, okay, like what's he going to add? But now we're like, he wasn't part of the content development necessarily, but now we're going to be utilizing him quite a bit more. So like intentionally getting those team members to be involved.
Yep. And that's what, I mean, one of the things we've talked about is what is the dream team, right? You're going to have your content expert, you're going to have your instructional designer, your project manager, your graphic artist, we're trying to figure out, like, if you could make it perfect, who would be that core group of people? So we're trying to figure that out. I mean, not that it's only up to us, but we like to listen to folks, and next time we propose something, use that to inform those proposals. So. Do we have any other questions? I think we only have about a minute left. Is that correct, Kyle?
Yep. Yes.
All right. We've got a note from James. Love the projects and what everyone is doing. Does the Rebus provide any support after the book is completed? I believe they provide a little bit, don't they? Is that my understanding, is that you can house it there? Go ahead. Those of you who are in the program. Do you have any indication of the level of support that comes afterwards?
They've been very supportive. I mean, maybe Lauren or Nicole or Andrew knows better, but I don't know if we've had many conversations about like, and once it officially ends, then you can call us once a week or something like that. But they've been very supportive this whole time. They even at a certain point restructured our meetings to be more one-on-one because they realized that everybody was at a different stage. And so somebody was super, super advanced, and then somebody was like stuck in the quagmire of like developing content.
Right.
And so I found that they overall were a very supportive program.
Yeah, and I would just say, dealing with them on the contractual side and trying to, because again, this wasn't anything they had really done before this way. They were extremely flexible in helping us figure out what is it that we're asking you to do. And so my guess is, though I don't know specifically, it'll be better than you might expect. Let's see, the Rebus and OEN office hours are great too and open to all. Anne, can you share more about that?
Sure, I'll find the link in a moment, but Rebus and the Open Education Network partner for monthly office hours where they're pretty informal, but they'll have a topic and a speaker or a couple folks on a panel and then open it up to discussion. So I found that as a sort of new OER coordinator on my campus to be really useful for hearing about how things are going. I've seen sessions like how to say no to projects and open education, right? Because we all get too busy. So those types of sessions just deal with kind of the practical issues that go along with open projects. I'll find the link, and Annika put the overall link as well.
Yep. Annika Manny, who is with us today and is doing so much of this work with Rebus and with MHEC. So I need to give a shout out to her. She also put in the chat that the Rebus community is an open community and that anyone can join to learn about these projects. So and she provided that link there. Yeah, I think they've been amazing to work with, and they've been really supportive and flexible. So, all right. Well, thank you all for making some time today and for listening, and keep an eye out for anything else we do and these projects and those yet to come.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.